This morning, I want to talk to you about having unreasonable hope. Is how I have begun the new year. So first, a quote from Paramahansa Yogananda, who wrote, "The new year has come to greet you with new hopes, new determination, new will to achieve, new activities. The trial of trials and the yawning chasms of woe have been left behind in the dark night of the past. Now you are entering the daylight of a newborn hope of the new year. Cast off the coil of the decayed thoughts of the past year." That's quite a thought for us, isn't it? Cast off the coil of the decayed thoughts of the past year. Be reincarnated into vital living of the new year. Every day in the new year must become an altar for the God of new living, new achievements in wisdom, and new joy. So, what is it? What is it that draws us to new beginnings? What is it that has us yearn to make a fresh start? And more importantly, what is it that has us believe that we can, that it's even possible? When I opened the New Year's retreat, I shared with the participants that I have been feeling what I have termed unreasonable hope. It has been with me now for several days prior to the start of the new year. And I have called this hope unreasonable because it is not based on reason, because it is not based on looking outside at circumstances in our world and saying, oh, I feel hopeful about this, or I feel hopeful about that. This hope came to me as a direct experience of the living reality of God as our life, as the support that we have and need in our world today. So it came to me as a spiritual experience. And now, of course, it has left me with the assignment to live into it. So I want to offer first some words from one of my favorite writers and spiritual teachers, Rabindranath Tagore. He said, "Within us, we have a hope which always walks in front of our present narrow experience." Isn't that lovely? Within us, we have a hope which always walks in front of our present narrow experience. It is the undying faith in the infinite in us. It is the undying faith in the infinite in us. It will never accept any of our disabilities as a permanent fact. It sets no limits to its own scope. It dares to assert that man has oneness with God, and its wild dreams become true every day. This hope that walks in front of our present narrow, constricted, contracted experience is our own expanded consciousness. It's the spiritual awareness that abides in our infinite nature and is free of what we think of as limitations. The awakened heart within us has undying faith in the infinite because it knows the infinite. It is the infinite. The self, the true self, is known by the self, the divine self. This divine self never accepts limits or believes in any of our disabilities or constraining circumstances as permanent fact, because its abode is in the unbounded, unlimited infinite. It remains untouched by any constraints, which are always temporary. It remains untouched by any constraints, which are always temporary. Circumstances change. Essence does not. That consciousness, that which we are, which dares to assert its oneness with God, knows and sees the graceful unfolding of its divine potential every day. And I think more importantly, relies on it. So this is the year that we really have to rely on the divine truth of our being, and we have to live into it. The more that we can see it, the more we can cultivate it, the more it appears in our life. The more contracted we are, the more fearful we are, the less we're able to see that divine support and those divine possibilities. So with the bold and necessary assertion of our oneness with absolute reality, we draw forth our divine potential into expression. And when we do this, what we would call our New Year's resolutions take on a whole new perspective. No longer setting goals to become, something or someone different, to be better than we are, to change. Instead, we use the power of what is called sankalpa, our deepest desire, or spiritual intention, to call forth that which we already are in essence. So that's a big difference. So often we fail at our goals, our resolutions, because the fundamental premise that underlies them is flawed. The flawed premise is that something's wrong with us, something's wrong with our life, something is missing, or something needs to be fixed. But when we work with spiritual intention, we draw forth from wholeness, we draw forth from the infinite within us, and we call forth our wild dreams. And by wild dreams, I mean that which is beyond our individual capacity, and we know it. That which is bigger than us, that which depends, relies on divine power, inspiration, and grace in order to succeed. So we, who are made in the image and likeness of God, are invited to live our divine lives as if we are heirs to the kingdom, as if divine resources are there for us to draw upon. Because they are. But our minds, of course, are the key that unlocks the treasure house in the kingdom. So how we conceive of what we are is equals our degree of receptivity to divine blessing. How we conceive of what we are is the degree of receptivity we bring into the treasure house of divine possibility. So do we think we're on our own, or is there a power greater than ego that supports us? Do we come from the perspective of being separate from the source, trying, working hard, setting our will to get what we need to push through? Or do we recognize that we have the keys to the kingdom, one whose very life is inherently rooted in the divine, giver of all gifts? When we know that, what we do in the power. We do in the power of God. Think of the invocation to the Ishopanishad. All this is full. The source that we come from, all this is full. All that is full. All that it expresses in fullness. All this is full, all that is full. From fullness comes fullness. Take fullness from fullness. Only fullness remains, the inexhaustible source. So at the opening of the new year, we are reminded that we can and really must. Especially now, we must bring forth what is within us from the fullness within us. We are here to live an awakened life, to dream those wild dreams, to not be constrained by conditions, and to realize them, to bear witness to the power and glory of spirit that makes all things possible. There is a reading from the Gospel of Thomas that is really a call, to bring forth what is within us, and tells us, we need to do this for our own well-being and to contribute to life. And when we do, it is very helpful to us. When it doesn't, it's a source of trouble. When we don't do it, it's a source of trouble for us. So that reading from the Gospel of Thomas says, if you bring forth what is within you, what you bring forth will save you. If you bring forth what is within you, what you bring forth will save you. If you do not bring forth what is within you, what you do not bring forth will destroy you. It will work against you because you'll be at cross purposes with your higher self, with your own self. There's a similar teaching found in the 6th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, the 5th and 6th verses. Let a man lift himself by himself. Let him not degrade himself for the self, capital S self. The self alone is the friend of the self, and the self alone is the enemy of the self. For one who has conquered his or her lower self by the higher self, the self is a friend. But for those who have not possessed the higher self, that very self will act in enmity like an enemy. So in his translation on that Gita verse and his commentary on that, Radhakrishnan writes, the universal self can be the friend or the foe of the personal self. And we know this. We know when we're at odds with our own soul, with our own self. This is not a secret. This is just saying it out loud so we can know we need to line things up in the new year. So he wrote, the universal self can be a friend or the foe of the personal self. If we subdue our petty cravings and desires, if we do not exert our selfish will, we become the channel of the universal self. If we don't get all caught up in the small self, when we open ourselves, we become the channel of the universal self. If our impulses are under control, and if our personal self offers itself to the universal self, our personal self offers itself to the universal self, then the latter becomes our guide and our teacher. Every one of us has the freedom to rise or to fall, and our future is in our own hands. When we choose to cooperate with the infinite, to bring forth that which is within us, we are met by the supportive power and presence of divine grace. So I want to encourage you along with me to ask a new question in this new year. So not the question of, what do I want or what should I do, but this question, which is, what does my soul want? What does my soul want? So of course I have to clarify the technicality here and tell you that, of course, the soul doesn't really want anything because the soul is full. The soul is whole. The soul is complete. It doesn't lack or need or want anything. But what I am saying to you about contemplating that question, what does my soul want, is based on knowing that the soul, the fullness of the divine self, within us, as us, is ever ready to express its fullness in our life. So the soul naturally wants to express. The soul is God in expression in the world and wants to express its fullness. Its nature is to do that. So in order for that to happen, we have to cooperate with it. We have to open to it. We have to ask, what is my soul waiting to express? What do I yearn for in my life? What is my soul ready and willing to express? And that question really means for each of us, what am I willing to be? Who am I willing to be in my fullness? If I let go of the ways in which I hold back, the ways in which I feel contracted and afraid, what would I be? if I let go, if I opened to that? What am I willing to be in the new year in allowing the fullness of my soul to express? So notice the rising of your soul energy in this new year. That's the clue of what it is within you that wants to express the hope that is walking in front of you. Hope for love, hope for healing, hope for blessing, hope for enlightenment. Whatever that hope is, pay attention to it. The hope that walks in front of you. It calls us to new life. So recognize it as the whisper. Could be a shout, but might be a whisper of spirit to soul saying, come forth. Spirit saying to soul, what you most deeply desire, what you most deeply yearn for is what I want for you and what I am calling you forth to step into, to live fully, to express your heart's deepest desire. I'm going to close the message with some words from the poet Rumi. This is one I'm reading from the Rumi collection, edited by Kabir Helminski. When love for God has been doubled in your heart, there is no doubt that God has love for you. When love for God has been doubled in your heart, when you feel that pull, there is no doubt that God has love for you. No sound of clapping comes forth from only one hand. The thirsty man is moaning, oh, delicious water. And the water is calling, where is the one who will drink me? The thirst in our souls is the magnetism of the water, capital W water. The thirst in our souls is the magnetism of the divine water. We are its, and it is ours. So let us step forth into this new year with our unreasonable hope. Om.